What what is up, everyone? Welcome back to CageChat MMA. We are here, of course, to preview UFC Vegas 67. The UFC is back after what, 3-4 weeks out since the last card of the year, of course, where Sean Strickland actually did main event against Jared Cannonier. A bit of a card and a fight that fizzled out, didn't it? You know, it was one that going into that weekend we were buzzing for, but the fight played out and it didn't really, catch fire. So it's a bit of the bittersweet taste to end the year. But we're back now, back at the Apex, which again, a bit of a downer. You'd expect maybe at this point, especially this start of the pandemic, that the UFC would be doing shows on the road. But I guess with the Apex that they have got the capability to do shows week in week out with any sort of costs of hiring a venue and all that nature, and they know that fans are going to tune in on the ESPN Plus, so they've already got that sort of market nailed down. But tonight's fight, of course, was originally scheduled to be Kelvin Gastelum against Nassourdine Imavov, which is a fight that I would have favoured Imavov in because Kelvin Gastelum isn't in the best of form recently. But obviously Kelvin Gastelum pulled out injured, and Sean Strickland has stepped up to the plate tonight, which is very noble of him. Of course, he did only fight 3-4 weeks ago, but of course that now means that it's a light heavyweight contest, and that could have big factors in how this fight plays out because of course yesterday in the weigh-ins, Sean Strickland hit the scales at 204, whereas Imavov hit the scales at 194. Now of course that is all perfectly above board because of the nature and the contract being at 205 at this point. But how big are the 10 pounds difference going to be? Because of course, Imavov coming into this week would have been getting ready and throughout his camp would have been getting ready to hit the scales at 185. So he would have had another 10 pounds to lose coming up to this week or when Kelvin Gastelum pulled out a fight. But Sean Strickland came in on weight. Where is he at? Because obviously he's only fought 3 or 4 weeks ago. He didn't take too much damage. It wasn't the most damaging the fights. It was more of a tactical back and forth. And he didn't get hurt, he didn't get cut too much. But of course he hasn't trained for this fight. He's been in the gym, but he's not been preparing for an Imavov. So it's gonna be interesting to see where he's at. It'd be a good way for him to bounce back after a disappointing 2022, where he lost to both, of course, Alex Pereira and then Jared Cannonier, albeit two top of the food chain middleweights. Imavov is certainly someone who I put up there with the Dricus du Plessis of this world, the Roman Delitzes of this world. They're building up to become the next sort of generation of this middleweight division. Imavov is currently ranked at 12th in the division, whereas obviously Sean Strickland's in that top 5, top 6 bracket. And it is a good test for Imavov. It's a better test than I believe Kelvin Gastelum would have been, who was ranked below him at 13. So the roles have reversed for Imavov. He's become someone who's got something more to fight for now. Obviously, Kelvin Gastelum would have been a good name on his resume, but Sean Strickland has that position as well for Imavov to really kick off 2023. So let's have a look at the tail of the tape. Obviously, 25-5 against 12-3. Obviously, Imavov coming from that gym at MMA Factory, training with the likes of Cyril Garner, giving his corner tonight. Maybe a bit of Ngannou prior to Ngannou's departure from that. I'm not too sure off the top of my head, but if you remember at UFC Paris, you had the likes of Benoit Saint Denis. They had a fantastic night for French MMA in Paris back in September last year, and obviously Imavov is looking to continue that this year. And he does have a 2-inch height advantage, although he does have a 1-inch reach disadvantage to Sean Strickland. But he does have 4 years on Strickland also. And again, when you're 27, 28, 29, you're coming into your prime, whereas Sean Strickland, is should be counted as in his prime at a minute at 31 years of age. And it's going to be an interesting battle. I think had both of these been trained for this fight, I think Imavov is the more skillful fighter with a bit of a higher potential. I think Sean Strickland isn't limited, but he's a bit one-dimensional with his striking, and he can be found out in other areas, and sometimes he isn't the best defensively. Maybe that's just because he was fighting Alex Pereira and that image is burned into her brain. And maybe that more respect for getting to Pereira than disrespect on Sean Strickland's part. And let's not forget, Sean Strickland is quite a divisive character. Some people find him very funny and like him. Some people dislike his type of humour. But he is an interesting character in this sport. But Imavov, he's coming off wins against Jacqueline Buckley, Edmund Shabazian, and Ian Heinisch. 2 wins out of those last 3 wins also. 2 finishes out of those last 3 wins, should I say. Jacqueline Buckley went the distance back in September at UFC Paris. And again, it'd be interesting to see what he was like yesterday, trying to rehydrate, because obviously he wasn't in his optimal sort of at his optimal weight to fight Sean Strickland, because obviously both of them have different schedules and different sort of targets to hit. But I'm going to go with Imavov. I think Imavov is talented enough to get it done. I think he has a little bit too much ahead of Sean Strickland. But again, we know Sean Strickland can bang. He has a tough chin. Probably Alex Perry knocked him out, but he's seen the likes of Jack Marshman and that prior to that. Give him good tests. And he can be quite cocky. And ironically, Sean Strickland is the kind of fight you enjoy seeing at the Apex, because you get to hear him in the cage, you get to see him and hear those sort of trash talking moments, similar to like how Kevin Holland does it. You get to be able to hear those conversations in the octagon, which of course without an audience you don't get. But I am going to go with Imavov to get the job done. Of course, he was scheduled to fight tonight, so he was prepared to be walking into the octagon tonight. But it's a good fight nonetheless. It's a good main event. It's a better main event, in my opinion, than Gastelum versus Imavov would have been, especially at the Apex, because the Apex isn't the most fantastic arenas anymore because of the nature of London and Jacksonville and Orlando, and the traveling events that the UFC do, Singapore's, etc., and of course the pay-per-views that we saw last year. The UFC and MMA as a whole has a bit more electricity when there's fans involved, especially as a European fight fan, or as well, having to stay up at 3, 4, 5 a.m. in the morning. Sometimes you just need that energy of the fans, and that sort of when someone gets hurt or the celebration, etc. You need that just to perk yourself back up again. When it's in the Apex, it can be quite monotone and quite sort of watching the same thing over and over again. Although you might appreciate the more technical side of things a little bit more, because you're more focused on those rather than what the crowd are doing, etc. But yeah, I think Imavov gets the job done tonight. I think he gets a finish tonight. But yeah, I definitely have him as one of the fighters to watch this year, and definitely, as I said, those next chapters of middleweights, the Delidze's, the Andre Muniz's, the Dricus Du Plessis's, I think they're going to be taking over the party at middleweight this year. Pardon me. In the co-main event, of course, you've got Dan Ige versus Damon Jackson. Of course, Dan Ige, a staple of this featherweight division now. 15-6. He is on the back of a 3-fight loss skid, but of course, those losses being against the Korean Zombie, Josh Emmett, and most recently Movsar Evloev. All decisions. Prior to that, he did get a win against Gavin Tucker with a first-round finish. I think it's only it's 22 seconds in, but I think it's one punch knockout as well. Prior to that, he did lose to Calvin Kattar, but he's got wins like Edna Barboza on his resume. He's got Mesut Bekic, both split decision wins, but good wins nonetheless. So he's in a bit of a rough sort of stint in his career. He came out on media day and said he didn't want to be the forgotten person that would, the forgotten man of this division. But you see the likes of Shane Burgos just gone over to PFL, and I put Dan Ige in that sort of position as well. They're exciting fighters to watch, but they win one, lose two, and they never really get to that next stage, that top 5, top 8, which is no feat of themselves. The top 8 of the UFC is very incredibly difficult to get into, and currently the featherweight division is currently very, very difficult to get into. There's those top layers of Volkanovski and Holloway, and then there's the layers of Arnold Allen, Yair Rodriguez, Brian Ortega, Calvin Kattar, etc. So there is some levels to this division right now. But Damon Jackson, 22-4-1. He is on an outrageous run, 4-fight win streak, 2 finishes within those as well. 1 submission against Camilo Kirk, 1 win against Charles Rosa, which if you've seen his Twitter at the moment, he's been going heavily at Brandon Lockname, PFL featherweight champion, of course, and Brendan's had some very funny responses back, which have been good comedy to read up on. But this is a good fight. But obviously Damon Jackson is coming into this one with the form on his side. And I think he might get the job done again. Although Danny Ige, I like Danny Ige. He's a fighter you want to tune in to watch. When a card like this isn't the best on paper, you see Danny Ige's name and you go, oh, actually, I will tune into that because I like seeing Danny Ige. He puts on good performances. and sometimes he does get a good performance on the night. And potentially this could be performance on the night worthy, fight on the night worthy, because it does lack that little bit of tenacity and spice that a card, like a pay-per-view card next week would have. But yeah, it's a difficult one to predict. I think my head's saying go with Damon Jackson. I'm going to go with 50k, and I think he earns another 50k tonight with the performance of the night bonus and improves to 16-6. I think he's going to remind us why he is just on the edges of that top 15. And potentially a fight, it'd be interesting to see. Giga Chikadze is up there. He's coming off that loss to Kevin Cater. Of course, he's going to be returned this year. But it'd be interesting to see who's around there. We've also got a fight that I picked out tonight. It's Ketlen Vieira versus Raquel Pennington. Now, Raquel Pennington holds a bit of a favourite of mine, just for the nature that she was one of the first fights that I saw in MMA. When I started getting into the UFC, back in 2016, when a certain Conor McGregor was, looking to become champ at UFC 205. Obviously, Raquel Pennington thought Miesha Tate retired on the night after that win, but of course she's been back since then. But Raquel Pennington, she's had up and downs, hasn't she? She had that, I believe, a motorbike accident or a quad bike accident, which stopped her from fighting for a while. But recently, she's put that form back into the winning column. She's on a 4-fight win streak. Wins against Marion Renaud, Pani Kianzad, Messi Kierson, and Aspen Ladd. 3 decisions, 1 finish. And those are very good wins to get yourself back in there. Of course, she had losses to Amanda Nunes, Holly Holm twice, and Jermaine Durandame. And, those are the best of the best in the division. 2 champions at bantamweight and a former champion at, of course, a former champion at featherweight in Jermaine Durandame, of course. And sorry, she didn't beat Miesha Tate. That's why Miesha Tate retired on the night. So she has a winner, though, former bantamweight champion also. She also got a winner over Irene Aldana, former, she's been up there in the top 5 for a long time. So she's got some good wins on her column, on her resume. And the win tonight would put her 5 in a row and potentially next in line for the title. Now, where Amanda Nunes is at 135, you have got Ketlen Vieira at number 2 tonight. So, of course, the biggest sort of target and a win tonight would mean that, Raquel Pennington beats the number 2. Obviously, Amanda Nunes is just beating the number 1, Juliana Pena, to get a belt back. I'd like to see the trilogy of that fight, but if not, whoever wins tonight would be next in line, in my opinion. However, if Raquel Pennington did want to maybe look outside the box, because again, speaking at Media Day, she wants to fight in May, I believe, and then of course her baby's due in June that she's having with Tisha Torres, which is fantastic to see. But maybe if she wanted to fight at 145, maybe you could call out someone like Norma Dumont, and maybe get a fight or a title fight at 145. I don't know where her weight cut is to get down to 135. I don't know where her optimal weight is to be at 145 or 135. I don't know. Maybe she prefers being at 135. But the featherweight division is a bit stale. Well, it's not stale. It's non-existent. It doesn't have a purpose at the moment. Obviously, with all due respect to Norma Dumont and Danielle Worth, who I believe are the only 2, and Chelsea Chandler, I believe, maybe the only fighters signed to the women's featherweight division right now, which is disappointing. But yeah, if you're at 135 right now, you must be looking at 145 and go, do I push those extra £10 up? And call out Norma Dumont, get a win, and you're next in line for a title maybe. If Nunes doesn't want to cut down to 35, because Nunes gets to pick out a bunch of who she wants and which weight class she wants. It's just who's next in line. But yeah, Ketlen Vieira, let's mention her, of course. Warrants her own attention, I suppose. On a 2-fight win streak herself, with wins over Miesha Tate and a split decision win against Holly Holm. So again, she's beaten 2 champions recently also. She is 3-1. She hasn't been too active, of course. 1 fight last year, 2 fights in 2021, and 1 fight in 2020. So she's only had 4 fights in the last 3 years. She only fought once in 2019 and 2018 also. So what's that? 6 fights in 3 years. So she hasn't been active. She had a lot of fights cancelled during the pandemic, and 2 fights in 2021 against Sharon McMahon and Miesha Tate cancelled. So I'm sure she's very frustrated from that. But she is only 13-2, losses to Irene Aldana and Yana Kunitskaya on the way up. But again, got a win against Kat Zingano, Sarah McMahon, Ashley Evans Smith. So they're good wins on her record. And a win against Raquel Pennington, a former title challenger, would be fantastic for her resume as well. And certainly cement her next in line for a title shot, whether that's Pena Nunes or her directly against Nunes next. So yeah, fantastic fight for the women's bantamweight division. A fight that I'm very interested in seeing. I'd like to see where Raquel can get to. But yeah, I would be interested to see if some of the bantamweights or one of the victors tonight says actually let's just do 145. But I guess if you're comfortable at 135, then you're this high up the division. It doesn't really matter, I suppose. It's just where you feel optimal. In the men's bantamweight division, of course, is Umar Nurmagomedov coming against Raoni Barcelos. Umar Nurmagomedov 15-0. Had a good 2022 with 2 wins. One against Brian Kelleher, which he submitted, and then one against Nate Maness that went the distance back in June. So again, he's looked fantastic since coming over to the UFC. 3-0 in the UFC, of course. But Raoni Barcelos is a wily veteran, 35 years of age. He's coming off a good win against Trevin Jones back in 2022, back in October. Prior to that, he had 2 losses against Timur Valiev and Victor Henry. He's got wins over Said Nurmagomedov, wins over Khalid Taha. So it's going to be interesting to see what fight happens tonight. Again, I'd imagine on form, you pick Umar Nurmagomedov. He's 26 years of age, and currently, that they're doing very well, aren't they? You've got Usman Nurmagomedov tearing things up over at Bellator. It's going to be hard not to pick against Umar Nurmagomedov, isn't it? On this fight, and again, this is one you'd be looking out for performance of the night or fight of the night, because both of these are very exciting fighters to watch, and I'm sure it's going to be a good fight for all involved. It's a shame it hasn't got fans involved. All of these fighters decided to have fans involved watching them, albeit more than the 200, 300 that's going to be at the apex. But yeah, I'm going to go with Nurmagomedov to get the win on that one. Punahele Soriano against Roman Kopylov in the 185-pound division. Both 9-2, so a good fight for both of those. Soriano, an exciting fighter to watch. Matus Mendonca against Javid Basharat. Basharat obviously came through the Contender Series late last year, if not the year before. Set 13-0, sorry. Of course, he's a fantastic fighter to watch. One against Tony Gravely, pardon me, and back in March against Trevin Jones. So he's had a very good start to the UFC, and he's certainly one to be looking out for tonight. And I'm sure many of them have got Javid in their picks tonight, as have I. I think he gets the job done tonight. Abdul Razak Al Hassan against Claudio Ribeiro. Al Hassan, a very good fighter to watch, an exciting one. Can win one and lose a couple, but he always brings his all, and is always a fantastic fighter to watch. Of course, in the 155-pound division before that, you've got Matus Rebecki against Nick Fiore. Nick Fiore coming off a bit of fire this week, and coming up to this card because of the nature of the records of his opponents and the level of the opponents maybe, and coming to the UFC maybe a little bit too soon. One of his opponents, Jay Ellis, got 15 and 98. 1, 5 and 13. Now, as a UK fight fan, this is not the biggest sort of outlier. This does happen. We talk about it a lot in boxing, about the state of journeyman and building your careers off fighters that shouldn't really be in the cage with you or in the boxing ring with you in that stance. But it happens, and he's going to get a test tonight of how good he is. There's a lot of talk about Raul Rosas getting signed at just 17, and there'll be talk about Rick Fiore tonight, win or lose, about whether he was ready for the UFC. So yeah, it's a very interesting one for him. But 6-0, coming up against a 16-1 Rebecki, it's going to be a big test for him. Alan Nascimento against Carlos Hernandez in the 135-pound division. Daniel Argueta against Nick Aguirre in the 145-pound division. And open up the night is Jimmy Flick against Charles Johnson in the flyweight division. But yes, as we said, we did lose a lot of fights. We lost Jeff Neal and Shavkat Rakhmonov, of course. Nassourdine Imavov we lost on this card. Priscilla Cachoeira and Sijara Eubanks. Eubanks missed weight yesterday, so that fight isn't happening. David Onama would have been a nice one against Jano Aarons. That would have been a good fight to see. David Onama, of course, a fantastic fight. Coming off that loss against Nate Landwehr most recently, I believe. But that fight was incredible. One of the fights of the year. But yes, I'm going to leave it there, guys. Do make sure to... Jared Basharat will fight, I believe... he is what? He's fight 6. So he's going to be on about 11:30 UK time, maybe. 11:30 UK time. So yes, make sure to hit that follow button. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube as well. Follow us at CageChat MMA on Instagram, TikTok, etc. And I'll see you guys on the next video where we'll be, of course, recapping UFC Vegas 67. So yeah, enjoy the fights. UFC is back, and I'll see you guys on the next one.